Oh, good. Here's Irene on her own, in her own room, a room of her own.
Right.
Oh, this is being recorded, Irene. You're getting in a room of your own.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to try some. I'm going to show the slides, and Tina's going to look at her slides and read her notes, or consult her notes at least. So take it away, Tina.
Okay, I'm going back to the Pietà because we weren't quite finished. So on that Pietà is right there on the first slide. And the next, let's see, these two, Bacchus and the Pietà, are two of the only surviving sculptures in Michelangelo's first period. Regarding the Pietà, it means piety or compassion. It was commissioned by a French cardinal living in Rome in marble, and Michelangelo was very demanding in his choice of raw materials. It took him 9 months to choose the exact block of marble and have it transported to the quarries of Carrara to Rome. When finished, I mean, it got criticism for, in particular, for the youthful depiction of the Virgin Mary. And he did it on purpose because, according to Dante's Paradiso, it says, "O Virgin Mother, daughter of thy son." And so he wanted her to look as a virgin, youthful, and her head is smaller. And one of the other things is, I think I'm going to show this later too, I'm not sure, but there's the way he carved it is a triangle, like a triangle for the Trinity in the Catholic religion. Let's see. I guess we can go. Let's see. Regarding the Pietà again, he was alive to bask in. I mean, he lived to almost 90 anyway. Everybody knows that, right? A few days before his birthday, his 90th birthday, but he decided to carve his name across the statue because he heard there were rumors that someone else was claiming it, and the amazing thing was that the Pietà went to the New York World's Fair in 1963. 64 is when it started. And there was such a big to-do about it. It was the packaging created for the sculpture's Atlantic crossing was designed to withstand a shipwreck. If the ship went down, the crate would float. If the statue partially sunk, the radio transmitter inside the crate would serve as a location device. And it was the most popular thing at the World's Fair. I can remember when I went to New York in 1963 and my uncle showed me that huge globe that was being built for the World Fair in 1964. I think it's Flushing Meadows, and it's still there, the globe. Anyway, in May of 1972, a delusional, because the Pietà went back and it's in the Basilica, it still is there, but there was nothing protecting it. As I recall, it was just a cordoned off rope or something like that, so you wouldn't go too close. But in 1972, a delusional man of Laszlo Troth damaged the Pietà with a hammer. And after repair work was complete, the Vatican had the marble statue encased in a triple layer of bulletproof glass. A lot of people complain about it, but I saw it and I didn't think anything was, I thought it was very nice still. Okay, I think.
Well, Tina.
Yes.
I just looked it up. Apparently, most, people thought that Mary was in her 20s when she had it, but the majority of scholars and historians believe she was most likely between the ages of 12 and 16 years old when she had Jesus.
Really?
Yeah, that's what Google says.
I don't know. I've never heard that, but anyway.
Not uncommon for that era.
Yeah.
I know that Michelangelo wanted her to look youthful. I've read also that he was probably in his heart a homosexual. He was a virgin when he died, according to the reports, and that's why he spent his whole life carving male genitalia to, you know, the nth degree, to the best that you could ever see, as in David and Bacchus, all of his. I'm going to go on to the next one, which is.
Oh, Tina, could I ask you one question?
Yes.
When you said that it's a triangle and the Trinity, is it like the Christian religion where the Trinity is God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, or is Mary in the Trinity here?
No. The Trinity is encompassing her head, the top of her head, to the bottom of her feet. And I was asking for a full page of that you could see it more clearly, but it's a triangle that encompasses her, but it is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is the Trinity.
Oh,
Father,
okay.
Son, Holy Spirit. Right. The next one, John, is the Tondo Doni. The next slide.
I have it as Bacchus and Pieta.
Right.
Is
Next one
that,
after that.
can you see that?
Yes, I already discussed that. I'm sorry.
Tondo Doni.
Yes, and that is the family that commissioned it. I think it was Tondo, and it was painted in Florence, and it was it's approximately 47 inches in diameter. He was called to Rome to build Tondo Doni. During his stay in Florence between 1501 and 1504, Michelangelo he was called to Rome to do the Sistine Chapel. That's what it was. And then he was doing this in the meantime in Florence. This is a painting on canvas, and it's the only work on canvas. And it's in the Uffizi Gallery still to this day. So the next slide, John, are some of the iconic works of Michelangelo. And you were asking me at one point to discuss what I like the most, but it's not important because everybody's their own person. I picked this slide because it's one of a couple of art historians who picked what they think were the iconic works of Michelangelo, the first one being David, as Carol discussed brilliantly last week. And the second one is the creation of Adam, which is on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, as you can see. Can you see that right there? Can you see where I'm at? You can't, yeah. The interesting thing about this too, Michelangelo did not want to paint this. He didn't want to paint the Sistine Chapel. He was arguing that he is a sculptor, not a painter, and, you know, raising a lot of cane, but the Pope gets his way all the time. So he ended up doing it, but he has his own way of showing his dissension, in my feeling, that God is touching, he is creating Adam. And you barely see, we'll see a hand closer later, but you can barely see God touching Adam, and there's no church in between. So in other words, God, it's man and God, not man and church. Let's see. So if we can go to, I have a list of all of the iconic works. One David, and can you go down? Let's see. I have the list of the iconic works. I'm sorry. David, creation of Adam, St. Peter's Basilica, the Last Judgment, Pietà, Moses, Angel, Madonna, Ruth, Bacchus, Doni, the Holy Family, and San Spirito's crucifix. I'm going to show you each one separately. So if you go to the next slide, you can see David, which we saw last week. And then the following one is in the Sistine ceiling, is the creation of man, of Adam. And that's why I was saying you could see God on the right-hand side as an older man touching the hand of Adam.
So,
Yeah.
Christine, I'm not sure, what's slide number are you on?
This is slide 13.
Oh, so we're still back on the iconic works.
Yes, now I gave you a list of all the iconic works, and now I'm going into each one separately.
Okay.
So the first one is David. That's slide 15. Slide 16 is the creation of Adam.
I am not getting that.
Yes, you are. Oh, right. Oh my goodness.
Okay, hold on. Back to the drawing board.
Can I help you?
Well, I thought I had the right one up. And it's,
Should we just change share screeners?
yeah, I think you'd better take it. For some reason, I'm not getting the right one up. There've been
Let me ask you this. Can you go down to the bottom of the slides and see if, uh-oh. I am screen sharing.
yeah, you show your slides.
Okay. What do I do now?
So you do screen share.
Okay.
Okay, good. And just go to the slide number. And if you want to show it with your notes, go ahead at this point.
That's fine. So let's see. So we went to the list. You got that right? And then
Right.
the next one was David.
This is good.
And then I'm going on each of the iconic pieces of art. And the next one is the creation of Adam. And you can see God on the right-hand side touching the hand of Adam. This is where I was telling you that it is basically Michelangelo's way of getting back at the Pope for making him.
So Tina, on the slideshow, go down to the next row and play from current slide. So we'll get the full picture. Remember, we did that before. Just go, the next row below slideshow.
Oh, below slideshow.
From current slide. You're almost there.
Okay.
There you go.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is the Last Judgment.
Oh, no, but leave it there.
What do you mean leave it there? I did. You mean leave it on this one? The
Uh,
creation of Adam?
It's not highlighted, so she must be on it, but it doesn't look like it's on. She's on it. That's okay.
Do you see creation of Adam?
Yeah, we see it.
Yes, so we can go. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is, I'm sorry that this is a
Oh,
mess.
from current slide is now not blanked out. So try that again.
Go down to current, from current slide and leave it there.
One
Down.
line below, one
One-
below,
Go down,
down.
down,
There.
Yeah, there you are.
click.
Good, now we got it.
The problem is I can't see my notes from here though.
We use your up and down arrows to go up and down to the right slide. See the up and down arrows on your keyboard?
That,
Okay, good, good.
I still don't have my notes though. That's showing the slide. Oops.
Or you want to see the side view? That's okay.
Right.
Okay, well then get out of that and
Is
yeah,
that okay? Can you see this?
it's okay.
All right, let me go back to, okay, so we were at the creation of Adam, right? You
Yep.
see that?
Yep.
And then from there, it was going to the Last Judgment. Can you all see the Last Judgment pretty well?
Yeah,
All right, because Michelangelo did a self-portrait and he is in the middle of this page where he has some of his clothes coming off. But not all. Okay, the Last Judgment,
So that's not Jesus there?
no,
That's Michelangelo?
right. In the painting, Michelangelo does a self-portrait depicting himself as Saint Bartholomew after he has been flayed, skinned alive. This is a reflection of the feelings of contempt Michelangelo had for being commissioned to paint the Last Judgment. This happened 25 years after the Sistine Chapel was finished. The Sistine Chapel ceiling was finished. All right, now, and then here's that Pietà where I was telling you, you can see the triangle.
oh, yeah.
All right, and the next one is Moses. Moses, they say, came right after David, and it was commissioned by the Pope for his tomb, Pope Julius. By the way, Michelangelo was alive for 8 different popes. We're all bossing him around.
Huh.
This is a particular time with Moses when he sees his people. He's coming down from Mount Sinai and he sees his people in worshiping a pagan icon, the golden calf, just as he had trekked all the way from Mount Sinai with heavy marble slabs bearing the 10 commandments. So he's a little upset. So he isn't just sitting down, his left leg and hip shift left while his muscular torso faces the right with tension and power. Although he looks left, his beard whips right, indicating swift movement. This was originally meant to be much higher on a monument so that his torso is longer than normal, than usual, but you're supposed to be looking up and it didn't happen that way, but that's what it was intended to do. Okay, the next one is Angel, and let's see. It's a kneeling angel with a candlestick, and it was created in Bologna, or Bologna, as I say in sandwiches. And its historical importance since it was a work that Michelangelo started to exhibit his signature style, soft and effeminate, demure in its loving embrace of this candlestick. Michelangelo depicts a strong youth with defined musculature and eagle-like wings. So he's got, you know, female and male contours. And this building, I wish I don't think I have the building, but it's an amazing building. I know, it was way before that. It's a huge building. Anyway, going on to the next one. This is Angel again. You still don't see the real building. This is 1495. And here's Bacchus, which we've already discussed, and you can see the feminine and the male in whatever he does. This is one of the supposed icons also, as was the dying slave. I'm so sorry. I'm confused. Anyway, Bacchus is, we've already discussed that last week. The next one is Santo Spiritu Crucifix. This is one of his earliest ones. I've got to find this one. What happened was after Lorenzo died, Lorenzo de Medici, the Magnificent, died. Michelangelo and his dad had to go back home. They weren't going to have their regal place any longer. And so Michelangelo went to this monastery, and he stayed with this group, the Augustine monks in San Spirito in Florence. And they let him sleep over and do whatever he wanted to do. And this is where it was a hospital also. So this is where he studied anatomy. And this was in 1492. So he was still very, very young. And this one is, you know, not even 5 feet high. And it got lost. And it was lost for decades, and it was found in the 1960s in a convent corridor and was really overpainted and, you know, in a mess. But they found it. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Sistine Chapel. Those were the icons, supposed icons for some people. The Sistine Chapel was built on top of another Capella Magna. That was the chapel that it was built on, and it was Pope Sixtus IV who started it. And the chapel is about the size of a football field, or the dimensions of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. This is the outside of the Sistine Chapel. And as you can see, that little chimney, can you see my lines here when I'm doing this?
Yep.
Okay, this little chimney is where when they decide who is going to be elected Pope, the smoke comes out of this chimney, because this is where they decide, where they meet to decide. And here's the inside, and here's the Sistine ceiling, the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And here is the Last Judgment over the altar. So he even, Pope Julius ordered Michelangelo to fill the ceiling with frescoes, which he did, but he had a crew doing it with him. He protested, as I said, that he is not a painter, and he was always under discomfort, and he even wrote poetry about different parts of his body, you know, just being smashed and all of that. Let's see. Contrary to popular belief, Michelangelo did not paint on his back. And he had a group of people on the scaffolding with him. But this was made in that Charleston Heston movie. And a lot of people think that he did that. He painted on his back, but he didn't. He said, working on the Sistine Chapel was so unpleasant that he wrote increasingly uncomfortable. He described the physical strain of the Sistine Chapel project to his friend. I've already grown a goiter from this torture. He went on to complain that his stomach squashed under my chin, that his face makes a line floor for droppings, that his skin hangs loose below me, and that his spine's all knotted from folding myself over. He ended with an affirmation that he shouldn't have changed his day job. I'm not in my right place. I'm not a painter.
Uh-huh.
All right, so here again is God touching, he's Adam. And here's a better picture of God as an older man. And Michelangelo saved this particular piece of the ceiling for the last. There's some medallions that are in the ceiling as well. And I don't think they let you carry binoculars, but they're so, relatively small, because I believe that it's I've read that it's 4 stories high or 6 stories high. And you could hardly see the medallions unless you look at it like this. And there were 15 of them. And then again, this is the Last Judgment. And here's Michelangelo right here. And almost everyone is naked. Let's see. I guess that's it. There he is. Was that the same person that I picked out earlier? I don't think so. I think the other guy had
That's him, Tina.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
That's it, folks.
I never realized that he had painted a self-portrait, that he dared to do that. That was interesting. Well, Tina, I'm sorry for the foul up with the slides and the delay, but you have picked a very interesting selection of his works. It shows all aspects of what he did, from Bacchus to God, and you've given the pieces of his life that were the most interesting. So well selected, well done.
And he also, he did 182 pieces. So, we'd have to have a year to discuss each one. And all of the Sistine Chapel ceiling is from the book of Genesis. That's another thing. There's so many other interesting bits of information, though. And he was just, a very unhappy man, unfortunately.
Mhm. Does anybody remember reading when they were like a teenager, The Agony and the Ecstasy?
Yeah.
That was my introduction.
That was that movie that I was telling you about with Charleston Heston, where they put him on his back painting, which gives a lot of people the impression that he painted on his back on the scaffolding, which is not true.
Seems like it would be easier to paint on your back. Because
No.
if you're looking up like this, your neck must be in pain most of the time.
Yeah, he was in pain.
Aiko and I watched the movie recently, and of course, there's a love interest, right? There's a Medici woman who is his patron, but also trying to constantly lure him into a physical relationship or a more intimate relationship. That was interesting. And then the other was he has to go into hiding and he goes to the marble quarry, where he goes into hiding, and the Pope's men come to arrest him, and he flees, and he wanders the hills for a long time like a hermit. And then he wakes up one morning, he doesn't know what he's going to do with the Sistine Chapel, and he sees a cloud formation, which is a God reaching out to Adam in the clouds. It's kind of hokey.
Yeah.
So there was that, but the production values were very good in the movie, and Rex Harrison plays Julius, so that was a bonus. But what can't be seen as anything resembling true to life, as Tina points out.
Right. Well,
Right.
this is the last thing I'm going to say, is that they say some art historians say that Michelangelo, who was a deeply religious man, remained a virgin throughout his life. Speaking of that woman, but instead pouring his sexual longings into his work, portraying the male nude more obsessively than anyone before or after.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. All good.
All right. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. You stop share.
We lost Irene.
No, I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
I don't look like me, but I'm me. So
You have
yeah, Tina needs to stop share, and I
Fine.
can do a share.
I'm trying. Let's see. Stop share. Okay, got it.
Got it. All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
So
Okay, Irene, take it away. Lab leak.
right. So I'm going to introduce this just by talking for a minute here, and then I'm going to go to my slides, because it's been a rough 2 or 3 weeks working on this little project. And the reason it's rough is because there is so much contention going on between, if you guys are not, hopefully you're not following this, because it's really a mud hole. So there's a lot of tension between the people in the scientific world that believe that the virus causing the pandemic, this what I'll call the SARS-2 virus, came out of the woods, out of the jungle, out of wherever, and through, either they buy the idea that it came through the wet market in Wuhan, or they just say, it just came somewhere. So there are many primary scientific publications that repeatedly point to, so the group that says this was not natural, this was manufactured in China and got loose through an accident. So that's camp number 1. Camp number 2 is, nope, it could have come out of nowhere. We just didn't see it. So, and there are wonderful papers on both sides saying, this side will say, it never could have had this aspect to the virus in its sequence, in its genome, if it had come out of nature. And then this side will say, excuse me, but if you look at evolutionary biology of viruses, you can find these features that you're saying could not come anywhere but from synthesizing in a lab. You can find it here in the wild, in viruses. And so this kind of back and forth is going on. And there are a number of technical problems in being able to come to any kind of conclusion about that. Will we ever know? I think probably we won't ever know, unless the Chinese go through some kind of change of character and say, yes, you can have access to all of our lab notebooks, all of our databases, etc. So I'm trying to set the stage that there are these kind of polarizing influences in the question of where did the virus come from? And it does carry a lot of weight to decide or to figure out where did it come from. because if it comes naturally into the world, it says a lot about how close we are to a time when we are going to have a very dangerous bloom of viruses coming out of the woodwork, out of the fact that we take up too much space on the earth. And so biodiversity has shrunk, and it allows the expansion of populations that are dangerous to us. If you say it's a lab leak, then it comes to the question, was it a malicious lab leak, or was no malice intended, but it happened? And that I just decided I had to approach the question as no malice intended. So now I'm going to go to my first slide, unless you guys have a question about the kind of the reference point that I'm talking from. Does anybody have a question? Okay.
I do.
Hi, Aika.
Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about, Irene?
No,
Yes.
the thing is, obviously, if you say it's from China, whether it's malice intended or not, we released the 1918 virus.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And
We'll
so
get
the
to
thing
that,
is,
yeah.
why is it that we're so sensitive? I mean, it's obviously been politicized, but why are we so sensitive about, or maybe why are the Chinese so sensitive about that? I mean, it's happened before.
Let me go through how I think about this and come back to that.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody saw Jon Stewart on Stephen Colbert's.
Oh, God, that was hilarious. He was nuts.
He
Yeah.
was very passionate. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so let me go to, first of all, I have to go over to my share screen, and I'm going to show you a bunch of slides. Okay. Okay, so I am, let's see, I'm in my PowerPoint slide. If you guys don't mind seeing it, can you see the full slide where it says take the sin out of original sin?
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're going to get anywhere unless people calm down and go, okay. Because number one, we all agree, number one is you deal with the pandemic, you get vaccines around the world, you take care of people, and you do that no matter where it came from. So then hopefully we can get to the point where we get much more calm about the whole thing. There's some really nasty stuff flying around the internet right now. So I want to take the sin out of the origin of this virus, the original sin, and assuming no malice. That's critical to me. So let's see, for some reason, there we go. Okay, so I just want to point out, gain of function research is a critical piece to what may have happened, what almost surely happened, and to put it in context. So I'm just really briefly, obviously, evolution is gain of function. Every time something changes or mutates or gets a variant, it's a gain of function. It may be beneficial to the organism that gets a gain of function, or it may be detrimental, or it may be neutral and just carried along. That's where evolution comes in, for winnowing out things that are not advantageous. Gain of function research, therefore, is the basis of evolution. It's the basis of the variants that everybody is concerned about. Those are gain of function that happen in our bodies when we are infected with this virus or any virus. And it is done in the laboratory for many, many reasons. And there are people all the way across the spectrum in the scientific community, in the political community, and the social community about whether or not those gain of function research projects should be funded or not. But if we go through the catalog of all the things that we benefit from that were not possible without gain of function, like insulin for people, it becomes for me a no-brainer that we have to learn how to regulate it, but not give it up. So that's my stance there. But I just want to point out, gain of function is not inherently evil. We've used it to good. Okay, so then, and I'll introduce you in a minute to this group that I'm in love with called Drastic. Has anybody heard of Drastic? No, okay. It's an acronym for a group of non-scientist, non-journalist people who got very interested in mining the internet for databases and information from the very beginning of the pandemic. And they have honed their skills over time, over the course of the pandemic. Their findings are phenomenal. Once I got to their findings, and I got there through an article in Newsweek that was published maybe a month ago or something like that. The stuff that this team has found and put out just changed my thinking completely. And I found solace in that because I'd been reading a lot of very venomous stuff, and I was just really happy to find their stuff. So here we go. So the thing that just blew me away, and I believe at this point is correct, but I don't have any primary knowledge, I don't know. But I believe it's correct, their finding, because everything falls into place for me once I knew this piece. And this critical piece is the first line of this slide, which is that there was an outbreak of a quite dangerous illness in a bat guano cave in Yunnan province, the south of China, where bats carry a lot of coronaviruses. Remember, it was weird that supposedly the pandemic started in Wuhan, in the north of China, where there are not so many bats carrying coronaviruses. But in the south, in Yunnan, yes, there are a lot. Okay. So there was an outbreak. 6 men who were shoveling guano in this bat cave became very ill with a respiratory illness, and 3 of those men died. And at the time that I was first reading the article, that's all I knew, was that that had happened. And you don't know what the cause is. And so you say, okay, if I'm in charge of public health in China and I see this outbreak, what do I do? And there could be many other outbreaks. Nobody, just because we know about this one doesn't mean there aren't other ones, but there's this outbreak. You say, okay, what am I going to do about it? I need to know what is the cause of something that has a 50% lethality rate as far as we know. That's all we know. 6 symptomatic people, 3 of them die. So if I knew about this place, which is named the Mojian Cave, I'm probably completely destroying the pronunciation, but we'll have to go with mine. Mojian Cave. Here's what I would have done if I were the god of public health. I would have said, wow, we really need to know what's going on. We're going to take a ton of samples from these people. We're going to give them the best care possible, but we're going to keep samples. We need to know what happened. Later on, I can tell you a little bit more if we get to that, but I'm going to try and just get through this very quickly. Unfortunately, from the samples that were taken, it was not at all clear what these 3 men had died of. And it was unknown until later that actually there was a ton of study of those samples in China. But those master's and PhD theses that dealt with that were in Chinese, which is where we're going to get to the Drastic team in a few minutes here. So you have these people dying of something, you don't know what it is, you don't know where it came from, and you say, okay, oh my God, we don't know what we're doing here. We don't know what we have here, sorry, not what we're doing here. And so over the next years, you keep going back to that cave and you keep collecting samples. You collect samples out of bats, you collect samples out of guano, and you take them back to the institute that's capable of studying these things in Wuhan. So the samples travel from Yunnan to Wuhan. You have to assume from the beginning, and I forgot to point that out in my first line, illness and death, pandemic possibility has to be foremost in your mind. It's something contagious. What is it? They also sampled villagers living nearby. They don't talk about that very much, so I don't know anything about that. Okay, so you go the next years over and you try and learn the techniques to study these as well as you can. I would also set up a laboratory, just as they did in Wuhan, with human cells in culture, not just bats, not just bat cells, not just other intermediate animals that could have been the intermediate host of this virus. Because your primary question is, where is the organism that can kill human cells? That's your identifier that you're going after. You want to know, if your question is, what caused these deaths? And could it be of pandemic capacity? You have to ask the question, can it kill human cells? And you have two ways of doing that. One is cell culture, where you have all kinds of cell lines available with human receptors on them to ask, where does the virus attach to those cells? You also have mice that are genetically engineered to carry the ACE2 receptor, which is what you know coronaviruses are going to go after. So you're doing all these passaging of all these different, they had thousands of samples to study, and they're passing them over all this stuff and da 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 da. Okay. So that process of putting a potentially bat-derived sample, whether it's a fungus or a virus or a bacteria or whatever the pathogen is, onto human cells and transferring it is by definition gain of function research. Do you follow that? You're asking who has the capacity to learn very quickly how to kill human cells. That's gain of function research. So with that snappy background, let's see. I read what happened as a Greek tragedy. So it is everything that I have said so far about what I would do, I consider legitimate research in the interests of protecting the globe from pandemics. And a bunch of us watched the pandemic documentary that was put out on Netflix, I think in 2019 or 2018. It's a really good series if people want to dive into the learning about how there are all these organizations and people who spend their careers looking for the next big outbreak of disease. It's a really good documentary series. Okay, so just to go through now what I learned by reading about the work of this drastic team sleuths. And let me give you an introduction to them really quickly. So in the Newsweek article, which is delightful to read, I think their tone is really good and the way they talk about things is very good. People started looking on the internet when the first cases of the outbreak happened. And the book Premonition goes into some of the ways in which that was read by county health people, et cetera, in the United States. But there were also a lot of people who were just interested in mining the internet for what it's got. And the findings that they came up with when they asked questions about where have people died in China of a disease, et cetera, that's what led to this obscure little news article about the Mujiang cave in 2012, which I haven't heard anybody talking about other than in this drastic group. And by the way, that group puts all their stuff out on Twitter. So it's not like they're keeping secret what they're seeing, but they started this in February, March of 2020. So then, yes, then they found records that yes, the people from Wuhan were going back to that cave in the years following. And they were putting them into human cells and humanized mice. And I can show you the front page of a grant application that was filed to the National Institutes of Health in 2014, which is an interesting year to have that particular grant application go in, to do research, which if with my eyes and what I know about gain of function research, that grant application is to do gain of function research to understand what is going on with these viruses and what level of danger they pose. So there are little pieces that come in the what is that, the 6th or 7th line on my slide. There's the GOF, right, stands for gain of function. And if you put, as I said, if you put viruses onto human cells and into humanized mice, you will get gain of function. That's basically how I developed 2 therapeutics for cancer, was by passaging viruses over cancer cells. That's what happens. You get gain of function. Okay, so gain of function was also a technique that Richard Barrick in the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill was a world expert on, working with coronaviruses for gain of function research. And in 2014, Xi Zhengli, the bat lady from Wuhan, went with the help of Peter Daszak, who was an important name in this whole thing. He sponsored her to go to North Carolina and learn how to do the techniques that Richard Barrick had developed in his laboratory for working with these coronaviruses. So Wuhan became a lot better between 2012 and 2014. They get them a lot better at doing their research. Then what's really interesting to me, and just by dates is interesting, is that in 2014, one of the videos that the underground team of sleuths mining the internet found was the opening celebratory video of the opening of the Wuhan Virology Institute. It was built as a collaboration between the French and the Chinese. And the French had the techniques and the incubators and the safety equipment and all that kind of stuff that China needed to do this research. I bet you if you did a lot of research, you would find that people were dying in Wuhan in the labs before 2014 because they didn't have enough equipment to protect them for the kind of work they were doing. Otherwise, I really don't understand why the French would have put in billions of dollars and their technology to help build this institute in Wuhan. Okay, so my question is, 2014, 2 things happened. I had 4 fingers up. 2 things happened. The French build this huge institute in Wuhan, and immediately the Chinese kick them out once it's finished. They don't let the French collaborate anymore. That's strange and not in China's interest in this whole scene. Number 2 is that the National Institutes of Health specifically Fauci's division, the infectious disease division, funds Richard Barrick and Xu Zhengli, the lady in Wuhan, to do what I read as gain of function research on these coronaviruses. I bet you, if the intelligence community could tell us everything they know, I bet you both the US and France knew about the 2012 incident in the cave and the difficulty in finding the exact pathogen that killed those people. And that's why all of this focus is going over there at that time. Could be true, could be not, I don't know. But anyway, what is quite interesting is that the lay sleuths, whatever you want to call them, the internet sleuths, found these master's and PhD theses in databases that as soon as the Chinese saw on Twitter that they had located these PhD theses and master's theses that detail the samples from Mojiang Cave and detail how they were studying them, the Chinese pulled the plug on that database. Every time these guys come across something, the Chinese take it offline. And then more and more scientists got onto this Twitter group and started kind of educating the group, which are not scientists, how to read the literature that is out there. And Xizheng Li is a very well-respected researcher. And in her papers, if you look in the footnotes and if you look carefully, there are actually 8 viruses in her publications that are very close to SARS-2 and that could have the same capacity to cause a pandemic. So I think it's 5 afternoon and I have a lot of backup slides if people are really interested, but this is the desiccated version of what it is that I've learned by reading both primary, like evolutionary biologists talking about this, other people talking about this. But the kicker to me is, why were all of these funds and effort by the international community put into Wuhan? And this kind of explained it to me once I found this Newsweek article that talks about these people. And this information has been out there since early last year. So there you go. That's my summary.
Excellent, excellent. So,
Hi, Aiko.
The thing is, what I've read is, and I think it was Newsweek or someplace, Johnny and I both read it, is that the bat caves in Vietnam were the ones that carried it. Yunnan province borders Vietnam.
Right.
And so that would be easily transferred. Have you heard anything about Vietnam?
No, but I never searched on that. And that's a really good point. I don't know, so there's a young woman named Alina Chan who's at MIT, and she published an article early on saying that as she was analyzing the epidemiology of the pandemic, she was saying there's something really wrong here because it never should have exploded that quickly. It moved through human populations way too fast. So, but early on, the scientific community really did not want to point fingers. They didn't want to say this is a breakout from China. And the other problem is that Trump did, and therefore everybody on the left in the progressive movement said, no way is he right. It had to be natural. And it put blinders or fuzz goggles onto a lot of people about, is this, where did it really come from? What happened? And the Chinese, in my opinion, really added to the fire by pulling everything out of public access and going dark. And that just made a lot of people, including me, think, what are you hiding? What's going on? Lab accidents happen, but don't do this.
Why,
So I don't know what's happening. But
why did they kick the French out as soon as they built the place?
we don't know. We don't know. You know, there are news channels you can watch. Tucker Carlson is all over this. It's really upsetting to me that it's being politicized. There's a young woman with an Australian accent who has a very slick video out there that I at first thought was an Australian news channel, and then I realized it was her book launch. But she's written a whole book, and you know, when the language gets biased and nasty, I usually get so turned off I can't even read the article. And I missed a lot of early information from Nicholas Wade in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists because I couldn't read his stuff. It was from the beginning, it was clear to me he was going to say the Chinese are culpable. And we don't know. We don't know what happened. We may never know what happened.
And we still don't know why America withdrew their funding.
America didn't withdraw its funding. We, as far as I know, that was a 5-year grant. This is the cover page for it if you want to look it up. But basically, so Peter Daszak, the guy up there, came out very early on. It turns out, he is the orchestrator of the article, the letter that was published in the Lancet in the early months of the pandemic. And it had, I think, 25 signatories that are scientists saying this could not have come out of China. That is a conspiracy theory. This is Peter Daszak, and this is his application to the National Institutes of Health in 2014. And what he's describing is the ability to get gain of function in viruses in Wuhan. And his major alliance, as I said, is Xi Zhengli, who's the head of the Virology Institute in Wuhan. So he was double timing himself, and people pull up quotes from before the outbreak of the pandemic where he's open about what he's saying. And then as soon as the pandemic hits, he orchestrates this letter from the Lancet to keep the Wuhan Institute free of blame. And then there's, in the last month, the letter in Science magazine, and it's signed by, among other people, Richard Barrick, who is the guy that Xi Zhengli studied under in 2014 to learn how to do the gain of function research in Wuhan.
Why is it called gain of function? I get confused by that. Why don't they just say detective work to look at what mutation is out there?
Because okay, so, all right. So if in 2012, they had found something that could kill human cells right away, as presumably there was something out there because these guys died. Right. So if you have that innate ability in the sample that you brought in from the wild, you're absolutely right. You don't need gain of function research. But they didn't find it. That's what the brief summary that I've read of those master's and PhD theses is, that they could not find what the lethal pathogen was. And so now you have to ask the question, how hard would it be to gain the ability to kill human cells?
Okay.
That's the reason for that term, gain of function.
All right. Got it.
And just to add to that, I haven't read Alina Chan's original article about why that it was very strange that the pandemic went so fast. But usually when a pathogen comes from a zoonotic source, it takes a while to build up its ability within the human population to become a real problem for us. Because when it gets into your body, I mean, we carry billions or thousands of viruses in us, most of which don't do anything because they don't have the capacity, but they gain it.
Yeah,
Didn't say
the
something,
interesting statistic on that is if you analyze the human genome, something like 8% are residual viruses, right?
Yep.
so
Yeah.
didn't they say something about this virus though has a large number of people who are asymptomatic? So could it have been in the population asymptomatically and then all of a sudden blossom?
It's very possible. I mean, that, really what you're saying is consistent with the idea that when something comes out and gets into us, which they get into us all the time, but they don't wreak havoc because they have not learned the trick of grabbing onto something in our bodies. And so that would be an asymptomatic infection. But I don't know if you're talking about that evolutionarily or during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, there are many, many people that transferred this virus asymptomatically for reasons that I don't know that the medical community knows yet. Why some people got terribly sick, some people got mildly sick, some people developed long COVID, others didn't, and other people, it just went in their nasal passages and out into other people, and it didn't really cause them any noticeable symptoms.
Well, the background noise on coronavirus, right? I mean, back in the day before we realized the coronavirus could be so nasty, it was just listed as a common cold along with adenoviruses. So
Yes.
it's been out there floating around, coronaviruses, forever, and so you have this tremendous background, and who knows what series of mutations. I mean, obviously we're learning what series of mutations, but there may have been some people who developed a certain antibody to background coronaviruses that just fortunately gave them some cross immunity to the new pathogenic ones.
People floated that idea early on in the pandemic, but I don't know that anybody has. I haven't followed that one up, but you're absolutely right. Coronaviruses are cold viruses, common cold viruses, but they also have this. I was like, my eyeballs started spinning when I was kind of skimming through these evolutionary virology articles claiming that, yes, this could have come out of the woods. You don't have to presuppose that somebody was playing tricks with it in the laboratory. There are all these subdivisions. And for instance, early on, a lot of people looked at the thing called the furin cleavage, F-U-R-I-N. Furin cleavage is a certain enzymatically labile part of the spike protein. And they said this had to come out of a laboratory because no coronavirus has a furin cleavage site in it. And so that group was off and running. And then there's a minor publication that points out that if you look at the phylogenetic tree of coronaviruses, there's all these subdivisions, and the one that SARS-CoV-2 is from does not have furin cleavages, but these do. and they're close relatives. So
Yeah.
that recombination in a bat is very easy to imagine.
Yeah. I want to get back to the huge point you made at the very beginning. Are we living in a new world where viruses are going to be increasingly a threat to us? And there's some larger environmental factors that play a role. First of all, is our really invasion of wild animal spaces, right? We're guilty right here. We live on the edge of open space. We encroach, but in China, it's a huge problem because a lot of farmers live on the edge of wild forests, and collecting wild animals is a source of income, trapping, right? And in fact, China has a weekly reality show bringing in farmers who have trapped exotic animals that have paid off. It's sort of an agriculture education program for people living close to the wild. So that's one thing. And the example is, why the hell do we have people in bat caves shoveling guano, right? I mean, that's just a prime example. There are other less flagrant examples of that.
Fertilizer.
But trapping pangolins, is that a good idea? And the second huge thing is, now you get one outbreak somewhere, and you look at maps of plane travel, and track that on a graph, and come up with some sort of a transportation communication index, and you see that the world has got much more interconnected quickly with air flights. This all was mapped out quite clearly in HIV,
Sure.
where you had it emerge in monkeys, and there's an index case there. There's places in Africa where they're selling bush meat, and you can go back and trace the viruses, and it's been there for 100 years, but local. And then all of a sudden you get one zero case, which happened to be a gay airline attendant. And they mapped all that out about how quickly it could fly around the world before the epidemiologists could tie their shoes.
Yeah, I think actually we were lucky with AIDS in that it was, the outbreaks were in the late 70s, and the really global travel hadn't really kicked off. And if I remember right, it go with that guy to some Caribbean islands and hung out there for a while, and then moved to the United States, that kind of thing. I haven't followed the AIDS thing really quickly, really closely.
Haiti, I think.
Haiti, yeah, there we go. So, that's one off, and Ebola is a similar sort of thing. Zika, dengue, that's why the English are so good at tropical medicine, because they had to have an empire that the sun never set on.
Yeah.
So, the more we bump up against, but I just want to go back to your point about encroachment into the wild. I don't have any question about the amount of exposure to other animals. But I also was looking quickly at an article in which they were talking about, it's not just the interdigitation of the wild and the human populations. It's also that because we are changing the flora and fauna landscape of the world so quickly, that the dominant species that are coming in become so much less biodiversity therefore much less screen between the wild and the human, just in terms of serial passage between different species that can adapt something better and better to kill us. So we're making our own coffin here.
Huh, that's interesting. It's almost like a buffer zone, right? But
It's very much a buffer zone. I mean, that's why it was so problematic for scientists that I think I was reading it took about 9 months to find the intermediate for SARS-1. And in MERS, I think it took 15 months. I can't remember the numbers, but we're well past, people are saying, so why haven't we found the intermediate animal? We haven't found what was required in terms of natural, I'll call it natural gain of function to get to humans. We haven't found that intermediate, which is lending fire to the people who are saying the intermediate animal was in Wuhan. It was the laboratory.
it was thought, yeah.
And you don't have, go ahead. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but
Okay, you're wrong. Go ahead.
don't the viruses and bacteria have a fine balance in keeping each other in check? And if
Well, they've developed that.
and if
We don't know how many, yeah.
if we use a lot of antibiotics, we're getting rid of that balance, aren't we? Because we're sort of removing one group. And
Well, I think there are a lot better arguments about not using antibiotics than that one, but in general, the phage, they're called the phage that attack bacteria, are quite different from the viruses that attack us. I haven't yet gotten through to this friend of mine who worked at UCSF on phage, which are the viruses that attack bacteria, to ask her if there has been any genetic profiling to see, is there any continuity between those different pathogens? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but it's an interesting question. What else are you taking out besides the bacteria? I don't know.
So I think the one of the most interesting characters in Premonition, the book that Michael has written, is this guy Derisi.
Yeah, UCSF, right?
UCSF, you know, and he knows genomes, and it just reminded me of something Yuval Harari wrote at the beginning of the pandemic. He just said, okay, everybody calm down. Remember the last big pandemic, they didn't even know about viruses, that viruses existed.
Right.
They didn't know. They knew about bacteria, but not viruses yet. We know a lot more, and we can fight the increased capability of viruses to infect us with our increased capability to produce knowledge. And he said that very early on, and I was just reminded of what he said reading about Derisi and how much ahead of everybody he was, and just being reminded how quickly we had the genome. It passed from one political enemy country to another political enemy country because there's a network of scientists. And just hearing you talk about all the people writing their PhD theses on Yunnan cave bats, just makes you realize how curious and active we are. No matter where you live, there is this constant seeking of what happened in that cave. And we haven't got the answer yet. There's still a lot of questions, but just I think with the hopeful thing that you outlined there in your outline was all the activity around this question. Some of it has panned out. Some of it may have backfired, but I don't, without malicious intent. I'm with you on that. And that's what is so destructive. The assumption of malicious intent will inhibit some of this natural curiosity and sharing of information that the Chinese PhD students studying Yunnan bat guano wanted to share with us, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good summary. Thanks, John. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? This has
No.
been very productive. I'm glad you did that, Irene. I know better how to talk to my colleagues about this. So
I can send you the slide deck and I'll tell you what the slide deck is.
well,
But
specifically, I'm wondering if you could give some links to the drastic miners. And also the link to the Newsweek article to make sure we're talking about the same article. And also the documentary you talked about from 2018.
Oh, the pandemic. Yes,
Yeah,
that was really cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so I've just put up, you could do a screenshot of what I just put up. That is the article, How Amateur Sleuths Broke the Wuhan Lab Story and Embarrassed the blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so the one caution that little line that I put on it, beware of 2020 hindsight, is because when they're putting together these articles, I have to keep reminding myself that the reason the story flows so beautifully is because it's all hindsight. And so that was why I had to go through the armchair experiment of saying to myself, once I read through everything and I got to the, wow, that's the piece, is the Mojiang cave. I didn't get to that until I'd read all this other stuff. And I finally found this Newsweek article that'd been out for a while. And it led me to the Mojiang cave. And I said to myself, okay, everything falls into place now for me, because I can put all the pieces into what I would have done if it were 2012. And I'm faced with this thing that's very frightening. What am I going to do? So a lot of things made sense from there on. So that's the beware of 2020 hindsight, is because what they don't say, for instance, in that article, is that there may have been 100 PhD theses talking about the funguses they found in that guy, the bacteria they found in those guys, all of these other things that were not a coronavirus.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, is that they didn't know, they couldn't find the pathogen directly from these patients. They
Right.
may have found a ton of other stuff that was a potential human pathogen, but we don't know about those PhD theses, because when they did their Google searches, they were searching for coronavirus. That's
Yeah.
hindsight, right?
Yeah. So what we need is artificial intelligence.
Help, not that. No,
Somebody that keeps track of all this stuff and says, hey, you guys, you overlooked this.
right, really. Just stub your toe over here, would you please?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah,
Okay,
so
well,
I'll send you the other articles by links in an email.
okay, no,
Yeah.
that'd be super.
Yeah.
And then, thank you. What a wide-ranging session today, starting with Michelangelo and ending in a bat cave in 2012.
That's right.
Okay, see you all next week. And I guess what I'm going to try to do next week is for Juan Jose, just kind of summarize the 5,000 years of world history we covered and put a exclamation mark on it, because he's packing his bags, getting ready to come to the good old USA.
Right.
And the last 500 years, so the 5,000 we covered, 3,500 to 1,500. And Ramsey is gearing up, so we've got some possibilities. So we can talk about all that again next time.
Good. Yeah. We have some,
Thanks, Irene, that was really good.
oh, good. I'm glad it was helpful. It was painful. All right.
Oh, it was
Goodbye, everybody.
amazing.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.